In this episode, we're speaking to Jamie Milam. Jamie is an alignment coach, a strategist, speaker, realtor, and a podcast host. On her own, age of 15, and she overcame drug addiction, and she learned that she became a mother at 19. She lived a self-reliant life filled with pressure, built a better life for herself and her son. Her figure it out mentality helped her rebuild her life from a single Rubbermaid Toto, and went on to build 3 businesses that she runs today. Let's speak to Jamie and find out how she changed her life by changing her mindset. Let's find out. And remember, if you want to upgrade your money mindset, then click on the link www.millionairefoundations.com and watch my free training. Welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert. And today I'm so excited. We have the beautiful, the charming, the wonderful Jamie Milam. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for today's conversation.
Me too, Jamie. Well, before we begin, Jamie, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
Yes. So I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and I do that with pride because I like to stay busy. So I'm a realtor. That's my first and foremost business. That's my bread and butter. I'm also an Airbnb host, and I'm also an alignment coach and strategist, helping people create awareness in their world so that they can align their systems and their strategies in a way that's going to support their long-term vision with a lot more peace and a lot less pressure.
Awesome. So let's start your journey. You are this entrepreneur in the true sense of the word. How did you get started? And you're very, very young as well. So talk us through your journey and how did you end up being here today?
Yeah, so it's so sweet of you to say I'm so young. I love that. That's so kind of you. Well, I guess it would be remiss to not mention that I've been on my own since I was 15. And that's because I went down a pathway that was not conducive for a healthy lifestyle, and I was addicted to drugs. I found out at the age of 19 that I was going to be a mom.
Wow,
and so I found out, when I found that out, it was this immediate internal awareness of you've got to change your life. Obviously, not only for my own health, but most importantly for my son's health. Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly what I did. I ended up rebuilding my entire life. At the time, I was not even in my hometown. I had ran away from my hometown. So I had gone to a Goodwill and I got a blue storage box and had gone to the Goodwill to get some baby clothes. And that's what I came back to my house with. I had nothing else but that and a duffel bag. So I rebuilt everything from that point. I was on a mission to prove to myself and probably prove to the world that I was not going to be defined by these mistakes that I had been making for the last 2 or 3 years. And so soon I decided to go back to college. And when you're a single mom and you're going to school full time and you have a full-time job and then you pick up another job so that you can support everything, you start to have to plan very purposefully, and you have to be really strategic about just creating, your pathway. I mean, that's a lot to juggle schedule-wise. Yeah. So it started to be that pathway of becoming really systematized. And so I did that for 5-6 years where I was just juggling school, 2 jobs, child, all of these different aspects.
So let's stop here for a second, because there's a lot to take in, and I'm still at the point where at 19 you had the baby and you turn your life around. You've skimmed over that, and I find that because when I speak to so many amazing women, they've done these amazing superwoman kind of scenarios, and they just glaze over like, oh yeah, I did that. So let's pause for a moment and tell me, how does a 19, and I know that you made the decision, and once you have a child, you get superhuman powers. I know that being a mother myself, but you are still a 19-year-old, and I have a daughter who's 16 at the moment, so I know 3 years from there, it's just not imaginable for me. I want you to tell us what was going through your mind What help did you get? How did the universe help you? Because there was help given to you from the universe. And I want you to know whether you recognized it. But you had to make the decision first. So once the decision was made, talk us through the miracles that happened, because I'm sure there were. And you created those miracles, but the miracles had to happen for your life to go from one extreme to the other, which we are. We're witnessing firsthand where it is at the moment. Talk us through that journey, because I think that's worth knowing, because people can say, oh, yeah, I've got this issue and that issue, but a 19-year-old who's a drug addict, who's about to have a baby, living on the streets, how does she turn her life around and make sure that her child does not end up on the street like her?
It's a great question. And I appreciate your desire to pause and slow down in that aspect, because you're right. I think a lot of women, we do glaze over it because it's one of those things where it's sink or swim. If nobody else is going to do it for you, it was a method of survival. And so we tend to forget the strength that shows up in that. Right.
Yeah.
And I hear where you're coming from. My son is 17 and he's going to be heading off to college in a year. And I just look at him and I'm like, there's no way he's ready. And so it makes me wonder, how in the world did I get by? So, I mean, it's a great question. To start off, I mean, you definitely have to have some level of support. And when I say that, I also want to say that my level of support was nil to none. The best support that I had was I had a friend that was willing to give me a room in her house to stay in. And unfortunately, that friend was still in the drug environment. And so I had to be very self-responsible to stay in my room and then to ask, very specifically to keep it out of my space. Right. And ultimately I ended up moving from there, and the places that I lived in, it's the places that you just say to yourself, there's no way I would, oh my gosh, I would not want my worst enemy living in here. But the thing is that when you are able to recognize that you have to take responsibility that you helped get your life to where it was in that moment. And so it is what it is. And so anything that is not that is a step in the right direction. And so it started with moving out of my friend's house so that I would be away from the constant in and out traffic of a drug environment, to then moving into this trailer with a boyfriend. And it was like basically on a junkyard and we got to stay there for free so that he could keep out a watch out for like the equipment and everything. Girl, this place didn't have a working kitchen. It didn't have working air conditioner. At one point, my boyfriend had fallen through the toilet or fallen through the floor in front of the toilet. We had no hot water in the winter. I was 7 months pregnant, taking a freezing cold shower. I had gone to my family and I said, for Christmas, I would really like no gifts. I just need money. I need money for us to get into a better place. And the next place that we went to was better in regards that it only had one broken window, not two. It had a hole in the floor, but it had a piece of plywood that was covering it. But the room that would be the baby's was already painted blue. And to me, that was, okay, we're moving in the right direction. And so I took that with just absolute gratitude. It was so much of a better place to be. So then it's, getting another job after the baby comes and just working really hard and just kept moving up. And that's what we did. I mean, yes, it was from trailer to trailer in the beginning, some of which I, again, would look back at it now and say, gosh, I really hope we'll never be there again. And I know that we won't, because I won't let us get there. It just, again, it took having a mindset of gratitude for the little things that are happening for you and paying attention to that. Because I do believe that what you focus on expands. So if I sit and focus in on the woe is me and don't take any accountability for the fact that it was my actions that helped put me into this hole, and it's going to be my actions that's either going to keep me there or get me out. And so for me, it was, and I want to say this, that my level of gratitude, I mean, I practice gratitude every day, 5 pieces of gratitude every single morning in my journal, 5 affirmations every morning. My level of gratitude is so much higher, the practice of it, than it ever was 17 years ago. So it's a testament of, it's not like you have to be perfect at it. It's not like you have to be the most positive person in the world. You just have to find something to hang on to each step of the way, something that keeps pushing you and motivating you. And, like you said, moms, we get superpowers. And when you look at this little baby who has done nothing wrong in the world, nothing wrong, complete innocence, it's our job to protect them. It's our job to make sure they're in a safe and a healthy environment. And if that means I have to work 2 jobs and go back to school so that I can afford to be able to have a better career, to give him a better life, then that's what I'm going to do. I mean, when you look at that little face, that's enough motivation. But I know very clearly that there are tons of people that's not the right motivation for them, and unfortunately you are somewhat a product of your environment. And so that environment for me was very isolating for a long time, because when you're in a space of drug addiction, the only people that are drug addicts. They're not going to be your support team. So you have to choose isolation in small circles in order to progress. And again, it's sacrifice, but at the end of the day, those are not your real friends. They're not going to come running. They're not picking up, to do everything. Were there a few in there that respected, again, gave me a place to stay? Absolutely. Am I grateful for that to this day? Of course. But I think that it's a matter of it's a matter of recognizing that this is not an overnight transformation. I mean, yes, in hands on my heart, I had quit methamphetamines that same day that I found out that my pregnancy test said positive, hand on my heart. But the transformation from, struggling to success doesn't happen overnight. I didn't just go in and start 3 businesses 2 years later. It's been a journey of 17 years, and it's been a journey of continual progression and constant practice for awareness. You asked what other type of, support, and in the beginning, there wasn't any professional support. And in fact, I wouldn't say that there was professional therapeutic support until about 4 or 5 years ago, when because it was completely unrelated. So I thought, of course, because you just postpone processing.
Yeah.
Again, you're in survival mode. You're in hustle mode because you have this mentality that you are trying to prove to yourself that you are not defined by those mistakes. You don't want others to see you for those mistakes. So you hustle out of almost a new addiction. And you get addicted to that movement because it has a lot of instant gratification whenever you work really hard and you have a job or a position that your reward is pretty much based on your effort. And that can be somewhat addicting. And then you can start to ignore other things that are going on in your environment, which is what happened in my marriage, because I ended up getting married when my son was 8. And we
was that to the child's father?
No. And then we ended up divorcing a couple years ago. And it was in the process of, you have all this pressure on you, and you're not paying attention to, am I even doing this in a way that's going to be long-term sustainable and supporting really whatever the vision is for your life? If you asked me 4 years ago what my why was, and was my business aligned with that, and what am I working so hard for, I would absolutely say, yes, I know all of those things. But the truth is seasons change. Your why is to do all these things for your kid. Well, what happens when your kid turns 18, 19 and heads off to college? Do you still have a deeper why and a bigger vision for yourself? And are you paying attention to the relationships that you're building and supporting and just nurturing along the way? And so, I mean, now my level of self-awareness, in order to help me, create aligned activities and just strategy and goals, I guess you could say, right, is at such a level, I dare I say, I don't ever say a perfect 10. So I'll say like a 9.5 because of the therapeutic help. It's helped me communicate so much better with those that I am in relationship with.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. And as I was listening to this, I can see the emotion, I can see the sadness that behind all of that, and the sheer willpower that you used to get through. And it was sink or swim all the way. And when you have a child and you have that kind of mindset, sinking is not an option. Now, I say as soon as you become a mother, you get this, superhuman power. Not all women choose to exercise that power. Not all women go down the path that you went down. Not all women will make the sacrifices that you've made. It requires a certain level of mindset. And something else, which again, you've glazed over so amazingly, taking personal responsibility for where your life is the first step to empowerment, is the first step to changing it. It's the first step to going down the direction of where you want to be. So many people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s even blame other people for their situations. I'm here because my wife didn't do this. My parents didn't do this. And the number of people who blame, because I had a bad childhood, I'm still where I am. Well, actually, there will be an element of that. I agree. I'm not going to deny that. But you cannot keep blaming other people for your life choices, for where you are. Yes, sometimes you end up being where you are because of your circumstances, but you have to become aware and take responsibility for your life and turn it around. And this is what you did at the tender age of 19. I keep stressing this because I know people who are 30, 40, 50 do not have the gumption. They don't have the courage to do it. And then the gumption to stick to it. Like, I'm going to, I've made the decision. I've messed up my life. I'm going to sort it out. This is amazing. So I want to know, where or how did you develop this mindset of taking personal responsibility for where you were?
Well, I love this question because it's going to open the door for a little bit more vulnerability, right? Because I feel that it's extremely important that, in stories like this, that we do pull back the curtains, because I don't ever want anybody to judge, their insides on somebody else's outsides.
Yeah.
And so, in the beginning, that self-responsibility, it really can show up instead as shame.
Yeah.
It can be a lot of self-judgment and shame, like blaming yourself in a way, but also, again, holding yourself accountable that you did this, this is your fault, but at the same time, taking action to move forward, and so I do think that there's a fine balance. And that's the part that I don't know where it came from. It just was the motivator to not be that for my kid. I just didn't want this to be the version of me that he knew. I didn't want him to grow up and ask stories about me. And from the time that he was born, people could give their own version that he wouldn't be able to make his own discernment from, because he said, well, that's not the mom that I saw, So I think that was really my motivating factor. I don't really know what contributed so much to the self-accountability at the time. And like I said, I feel like in those younger days, it showed up a lot more like shame. And I say that because I know for a fact that it's the shame that starts to pile on the pressure, and sometimes pressure can work in our advantage in a way that is a motivating aspect. And sometimes it can be really debilitating. And I think, different personalities may be based on your upbringings. There's a therapist out there. Her name is Catherine Taylor, and she has a book called The Inner Child Workbook. And it's fantastic because it goes through the different ages of your developmental stages. And so what we don't realize is we have neuropaths that are being created about how we take on relationships with others, and the skills that we were developing at those ages based on our childhood. And obviously we likely don't even have memory of those experiences in our life, and then how they affect us going forward well into our adult years.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, sometimes people say, well, I had a childhood and this is why I'm like this. I was in an abusive place, or whatever the situation might be. And by no means do I think we're ever downgrading that, but
No.
exactly. It's a place of recognizing that, unfortunately, that was so out of our control. But here's the thing is, we didn't deserve that. No child deserves to be in a space that is not healthy and conducive. We deserve to be taken care of. We deserve to be in a safe place, to be nurtured. And unfortunately, like I said, there are developmental things that, until you become aware of them, that's what those stages were, and that might be parts of why you are the way that you are today. It helps remove some of that shame and starts to get you in this place where you can start to just understand yourself a little bit better, and you can empathize with yourself a little bit better, rather than tackling on that pressure. Because I think it can be really easy to say, why can't I just be better at this? Why am I not getting there faster? Why did I put myself in this situation? And instead of those whys or shoulds, those are, like when you're like, why me? Why did I? Those are indicators of shame in my world. And I think that it becomes really important for us to recognize where we're at, acknowledge it, like you said, acknowledge it, but then also start to come to an understanding that two things can be true at the same time, that you may not be happy that this is the place that you're in. You may feel some level of guilt and responsibility for putting yourself there. And at the same time, you can want more. You can be taking little steps to improve your life. And the two things can be true at the same time. And it's just a matter of which one are you going to allow to take over and to show up even higher.
Wow. So I think there's so much to be said, and we can carry on talking about this for a very long time, but we're going to wrap this up. I truly believe that, the success that you have today, and you are very, very young, of course, you're still in your 30s, to the success you have today is totally built on the character that was built during those times when you were going through that, that awful room or that trailer or everything else that you had to go through. And I think that strength of character allows you to take on the responsibility for success, because success does require responsibility. If you don't have the courage, you don't have the responsibility, if you don't have the character to be able to handle success, it doesn't last very long. It's so, and so-called overnight success is never overnight success. There's usually years of work behind it. And I know people sitting there listening today who think, okay, well, Jamie's done really well and Gull's done really well, but we both have different stories behind our successes. So what people see at the moment is the tip of the iceberg. What's happened underneath, and the things that you went through to develop your character, and the things I went through to develop my character, that is unknown to people unless we talk about it, unless someone asks, like I asked you the question, unless someone asks that question. So now if someone looks at you and says, well, she's only 30 something and she's got X, Y, and Z. But this is why, because at 19, she took on the responsibility of a child and herself, and dealing with life in a way that the average person has not. And that's why she has a character to have the success in her 30s, which most people don't, even in the 40s or 50s. Does that make sense? And this is why acknowledging, who you are and respecting it, not boasting it, but really respecting your journey and seeing for what it is so important. And this is why this particular story fits our today's episode so well, how you changed your life by changing your mindset. Exactly, that's what we did. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap this up. Tell us, Jamie, how can we connect? Actually, before that, I want to have a parting words from you. What would you say to someone listening to this and say, wow, Jamie, you've been through a lot. I don't have anything experienced that's close to that, but, how do I turn my life around? I'm going through a rough patch.
Yeah, I think that it all begins with a level of mastering self-awareness, really to identify what your needs are and what your desires are, what your triggers are, and really getting in tune with your body so that you can feel those things, and learning to acknowledge them, validate them, because they are your feelings. You are having them. They are real simply for the fact that you are experiencing them. And then paying attention to what feels right in terms of a strategy to be able to take yourself a step forward and honor that. whether that's creating boundaries, creating a plan, creating a support system, finding a support system, whatever the strategy is, pay attention to what it is that you need and learn to honor it so that you can then value yourself. And I think journaling is a great path to this, gratitude, affirmations, of course. And, with that in mind, I would love for, we can provide to your listeners. I've got an amazing little ebook, I guess you could say. It's a guide, self-awareness mastery. And so if they just go to jamiemilam.com/self-awareness guide, all one word, then they can get that free download. And it's just going to walk you through these different steps of how you can do that for yourself. Because the beauty is the more you practice this, the easier it becomes. You can do it for anything big. You can do it for anything small. I do it even to communicate with my 17-year-old, so your challenges may not even necessarily be entrepreneurial. They could just be little things that you're dealing with as you're preparing a kid to go off to university, but I think that it starts with becoming really self-aware in terms of what your needs are.
Awesome. Fantastic. So my next question was going to be, Jamie, how can we connect with you? Where can you find you on the internet?
Yes. So jamiemilam.com, and also whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, type in Determined AF, and I've got a podcast there that you can come and hang out with me.
Awesome. Fantastic. So if you are listening to us on the podcast, the links Jamie has just mentioned will be in the show notes. And if you're watching us on YouTube, then down below in the description section, we'll have the links for Jamie to go check her out. She's an awesome entrepreneur and an amazing human being. See how she can help you. But meanwhile, we have to have you back for Money Talkies, Jamie. But for today, thank you so much for an amazing, insightful episode.
Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing out there. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to me and Jamie today on Friday Feature. I will be back with another amazing guest, finding out how they changed their life by changing their mindset. Until the next time we meet, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.